للأسف إنه أنا الوحيد راح يحكي في الإنجليزي. So first of all, thank you to Dr. Thamari and Dr. Sheikh for inviting me to IPS, to Bir Zayt, and to everyone on the panel and everyone here. My talk today will be mostly about my project in general. I'm a student. I'm completing my year of field work so far, and I'm about to start the writing phase. I'm going to return to the States soon. So what I can talk about really is limited at the time. I think it's been useful for me to sit down and to have the opportunity to start to put it together, but really what I'll do is present a series of notes and thoughts on where I am, the things that I want to study, and how I've been doing it. So hopefully also some questions of method will come out explicitly and implicitly to speak to the idea of research gaps and horizons. And in terms of the project that I've tried to create, combining approaches from cultural anthropology and human geography, some of the difficulties I've encountered, and some of the things theoretically and specifically that I'm thinking about. So the idea that animates my research, I think, is really the state and the process of building something like a state in Palestine at this present moment. I began thinking about the project and looking at the PRDP, the Palestinian Reform and Development Plan, and one aspect that I found telling of sort of the future of Palestine economically and politically, which was the identification of certain strategic sectors for investment such as tourism, real estate, industrial zones, things like this, and a broad strategy for socioeconomic and institutional development through the encouragement of the private sector, the middle class, and entrepreneurs. The plans were elaborated in the August 2009 plan of the government and in the recent document on Palestine moving forward, and it came to include the idea that the occupation would be ended and a state created ultimately through these mechanisms. And so I had intended to come here and study the notion of entrepreneurship and the ways that these practices of encouraging entrepreneurs through government intervention and private development are contributing to this effort. I thought that this research population would be ideally situated at the confluence point of local, international, cultural, and economic interventions into Palestine. So this is why I chose this group. The problem that I quickly came to realize was that from my perspective in reading these documents, these proclamations really in New York and away from Palestine, is that they're far from coherent in the way that they appear on the ground. So the question really became, if I'm interested in economic liberalization, privatization, state building, and ideas of the middle class, about how to study the interaction of these plans and projects and processes on the ground. And again, if they're not coherent, in what ways are the plans productive? This is a central component of it. How are these plans productive? And how do I understand this productivity without attributing too much coherence to the PRDP or viewing it in isolation, right? So just a couple of asides first. I mean, when I talk about planning, I'm interested in something like the top-down proposals to build sites, institutions, and ultimately subjectivities, national economy, state, and so on. Second, just as there's little coherence in the appearances of the PRDP, there's also little consensus on what exactly the middle class is. So I'll talk about the middle class and the middle class as a target a little bit later. But Jamil Hilal says that 38% of Palestine is middle class, as defined by a unity of cultural values. I've also heard the argument that in the absence of productive sectors and without a working class, all Palestinians can be considered middle class. And similarly, I've heard the opposite argument, which is that given the economic difficulties and the occupied economy, it's not worthwhile to describe any Palestinians as middle class. So where does this leave us? And I think with the imperative of trying to understand the social fact of the concept, especially as it circulates between the plans that target and as a result define what this group is and the way that these people in the group will understand themselves. Third, it's important just to put it out that Gaza, I think, is an afterthought in a lot of these plans. Given the continuous assaults on Gaza, the political separation between the West Bank and Gaza, and the fact that aid there tends to be humanitarian rather than developmental, it seems that these plans really are mostly about the West Bank. And I think in all three of these ideas also there's a temporal dimension, which is that these plans are really for the future of the economy and for politics, for the composition of Palestinian society, and with some confusion really as to the geographical linkages or separation between the West Bank, Gaza, and vis-a-vis Israel. So on this geographical note, it seems clear that Ramallah becomes not only a central site for these interventions, but also a metaphor for the interaction of these processes. And that they're related to the structure and the structuring possibilities given the West Bank separation from Gaza and the consolidation of Palestinian urban and cultural life away from Jerusalem. So research gaps and horizons. If the intention is to study something like an ideological consensus or how these plans and proposals operate to create a new Palestinian politics, and through it, I think, a new Palestinian polity, there's a gap in understanding how they appear on the ground. So the horizon for my research is to try and study them empirically at multiple geographical and analytical scales in order to understand the ways that they are materially productive. So as a student of anthropology, one thing that I'm critical of is my discipline's localism. And sort of as a bit of a vulgar description, I'll say that anthropology has reproduced ideas of Palestinian exceptionalism and hence created a research gap in two interrelated ways. The first is specific to the discipline and the second is reflected in the literature. First, I think that the so-called methodological crisis in anthropology has really left us with a sense that what binds us together in our discipline is our method. Sustained, long-term, qualitative field research, followed then by a description of our findings in terms of local beliefs and sensibilities, and then really only after that to a broader analysis of their significance. And I agree, and I think it's been clear with the other talks that we've seen, that a field engagement is necessary in order to begin to try and understand the concepts in terms of their local situations, and an example of this is how I ditched the causality of the PRDP. But I believe that knowledge, in anthropology, I believe that knowledge is partial and contingent, and I've taken many lessons from anthropology's decades-long commitment to understanding the position of the researcher and the power dynamics of the research process. And this is not an especially new or unique position. I just want to suggest that one way out might be to think through the relationship between these global and local processes and to try and speculate on the possibilities for links prior to the field engagement. And not to do it, of course, to celebrate globalization, but instead to make the simple anthropological observation that groups of people and ideologies are not now and have never been static, isolated from, or separable from other groups of people or ideologies. Now, as for the anthropological literature on Palestine, I think that most of the focus on local practices without a broader analysis of the links between these groups of people, the constitution of those groups of people, the political environment, and so on, tends to make it difficult for us to see the situation more broadly. And one of the things that's been really huge in anthropology is studying resistance and everyday life. And I think this is an important project, but I think it really leaves us wanting when trying to understand something like the state building project and its relationship to global economic and ideological practices. And this literature also, I think, is embedded in the structure and the politics of the occupation and can reduce those power relationships of colonizer and colonized. And it's no wonder that a lot of the anthropological literature that's politically sympathetic to Palestine takes this form. Rarely can the occupied study the occupier beyond this relationship. So the point I'm trying to make after all that is very simple, just that the questions we ask dictate to a large extent the answers we get. And I'm trying to suggest that what we might be able to ask slightly different questions and do a little bit of theorizing at the outset in order to try and understand the multiple sorts of overlapping and contradicting spatial, economic, and cultural factors that exist in any place or in between any places, really to see Palestine in the world. So some specifics about the research that I've been doing so far. What I decided I would try and do is to cite an analysis of these topics in institutions where they may or not be apparent. So what I started to look at really is the housing market and some of the Newtown developments, specifically the Rawabi development. And I've done ethnography among developers, people in the financial sector, people in the ministries, and so forth. So just for a little bit of context, I'll talk just a little bit about the Rawabi today. I won't talk about the other things. But so it seemed to me like an appropriate site to put research of sort of these multiple topics and how they interact at these different scales. So this is an enormous, ambitious project to build a new city north of Ramallah between Atara and Ajjul and about 1 kilometer from the settlement of Atarit. Eventually, the hope is that it will house 40,000 people, and it's being built at a projected cost of about $500 million or more from Qatari and Palestinian investors. Last I heard, this number has been going up. So the idea of a middle class or affordable housing is central to the way that the project is being conceived and sold, and the idea is that it will establish not only a new urban environment, but also a style of life for Palestinian inhabitants. The company describes a Palestinian desire for stability and security from the present political situation, but also from a constantly changing urban form, given not only the settlements, but also the way that Palestinian building and planning works. For example, in Ramallah, if you build a house, there's no guarantee that a neighbor won't build one later blocking your views. This is something I heard in an interview. Another aspect is the idea that they will be providing jobs and jump-starting numerous sectors of the economy in terms of building materials, et cetera, and also creating a real estate market. So this new market tied to the idea of being a city that will serve young families, first-time buyers, is central. They hope for new habits among young Palestinians where buyers will move to new homes rather than expanding on, say, a family building. And there's also a new mortgage structure for mortgage financing that's coming with it. And there's enthusiasm. I mean, one person I spoke with, who is a potential buyer and a former employee of the development company, has discussed it explicitly in terms of modernity, a desire for services such as TV on demand, and as, quote, a little Dubai in Palestine. So alongside this desire to remake Palestinian culture and allow it to remake itself in this place is the fact that this is an enormous investment with long-term potential for returns. So the developers suggest that it will alleviate a housing shortage around Ramallah, and it is part of a nationalist project to build in the West Bank in order to prevent space for Israeli expansion. But they're also quite clear. We are not a nonprofit, they say, or we are not an NGO. I'll flesh this out a little bit when I talk about the idea of public-private partnership. So the question for me is how these economic and political interventions work together and what it means for the future of politics in Palestine on primarily the national and local scales. How economic liberalization and nationalism interact in an environment where the possibilities for both are drastically circumscribed by the occupation, and what it means for Palestinians. I'm not very far in the paper and I don't have much time. So the question for me is how these economic and political interventions work together. So I'd like here to elaborate briefly on two questions I have. The first is about the effects of these kinds of public-private projects on the future of Palestine. I think that the statement that Rawabi will be a little Dubai is indicative of something, of the idea that it's going to be somehow a place apart from Palestine, insulated from the geographic and economic context, even though it's part of the present and the future of Palestine. And one thing that I think is important is the way that the developers are dependent on the PA for offsite infrastructure and on the quartet to drive down, to pressure Israel for permissions to build the access road, and the PA for driving down costs, and how both are crucial in order to, I'm sorry, I got lost. Along these lines, I'm interested also in the process of land acquisition. It's my understanding that while some of the land was purchased from private owners at a market value, other tracts were secured through eminent domain, where the official system, as under the Jordanian planning law, was set up to compensate owners. It's relevant here that private developers are creating a city that will eventually become an official municipality with official institutions of management and representation. The second question is about planning in the future and is related to the public-private economic input into these projects. When I was told by a number of people in Palestinian private investment, quote, not to overestimate the PRDP and government plans, I was also told that the market requires a political solution and that in many ways, these companies are investing for the future of Palestine by investing for the future. In other words, they're building capacities now with an eye towards the future in which a political situation will allow the opening of the market so that they will be there on the ground, really. The specifics of the relationship between economic capacity building and broader future politics are not totally clear to me because I don't believe that the PRDP is propaganda. I believe that it's productive in different ways and at different geographical scales and in terms of local interventions, governing structures, the relationships of the PA to donor aid into Israel and so on. Or if these companies are not humanitarian or nonprofit, but also nationalist, what is the embedded vision of the future possibilities of the political relationship with Israel? So on the second question, I have yet more questions. Is there a vision of economic separation, economic links? Do these enterprises function to build a state, to change conceptions of national politics among people, to express politics among proponents of privatization? And I'm willing to speak of economics as social and political concepts, but I'm honestly, I'm not an economist, and I'm unsure how to understand them in terms of the creation of sectors that will go into a national economy eventually. Furthermore, how do these ideas resonate with the present move towards human security and development, which is a conception that I think implies an aggregation of individual liberal subjects and with language of security that seems really far too military and embedded in a notion of threat. So still, the question is, where does the political solution fit in? And given these sometimes contradictory claims that they're building a liberal population where radical national politics will not seem as relevant, and yet they're dependent on a future political solution, where's the state in all this? Or again, where's Gaza? I realize that this might sound a bit causal, as though the perspective requires a state for an economy, or to take seriously the idea that the economy is going to build the state, but I think I'm trying to understand the messy, contingent, weird processes that are actually contributing to the production of this place, social space, political organization, and Palestinian populace. So what I wanted to do now, and I'll just breeze through it in the last few minutes, is I wanted to start to really talk about the way I'm studying the state and sort of my conceptions of it and sort of a little bit of theory. But I mean, if I'm trying to study the state building process and what's some kind of an ideological consensus, a neoliberal consensus, whatever, I think that one thing that's useful here is to understand the state as a mechanism of power in relationship to itself, to its subjects, to its polity, but also to the global network of nation states. I had this section about a piece of Talal Asad's, and I was going to talk about the state and its norm-producing functions through administration and through law. And then after that, I made an argument for historical materialism, really. I talked about this one great footnote in Marx where he's basically laying out historical materialism, but he talks about the way that material processes are related to the relationships of man to nature, but also to the processes of social reproduction, to the processes of the production of social relations, to the processes of productions of mental conceptions in history and through repetition, which is just to argue for a holistic material understanding of the economic and social processes of making our world and our ideas about it. I also wanted to talk about Lisa Taraki's work on Ramallah, which I think is very interesting and sort of striving towards an idea of modernity and the relationship of that to the occupation. But, you know, perhaps we can just leave this for the question and answer session. I'm sorry that I wrote too much. Thank you.
شكرا كريم. يعني مداخلات غنية جدا بما يتعلق ببيئة البحث، ما يتعلق بالمنهجيات، الأطر المفاهيمية اللي تحتكم إليها الأبحاث. رح ناخذ مجموعة من الأسئلة ورجاء التعريف على أنفسكم ولمين بتوجهوا السؤال. بالآخر لسليم.
بدي أوجه سؤالي للمداخلة القيمة جدا لكريم ربيع. يمكن أفضل أتكلم إنجليزي مباشرة إذا ما عندكش مانع. Karim, I'm very grateful for your very stimulating suggestion, although you left a lot either unsaid or undisclosed, I'm not sure. Concerning the project of Rawabi, you gave a picture of, you mentioned the word contradictions twice about the objectives and the nature of investment in this particular area. And I wonder, do you think this ambivalence is due to the lack of disclosure on the part of the planners, or because they themselves are not really clear in their minds what it is? Is it a middle-class project? Is it a new city that, as you said, means to insulate a new class of people from the rest of the community, or because they are not sure how far they can get with the Israelis, given the increased intervention of the settlers in that area north of Atara? What is the source of this ambivalence? This is my question to you.
Okay, إذا في أي أسئلة أخرى؟ Okay, لا بالنص.
شكرا. اسمي سعد زهران. دكتور نصر، برأيك مين اللي بيتحكم بالسوق الفلسطيني؟ بيرفع سعر المنتوجات الأساسية للشعب الفلسطيني، بينزلها مرات، بيرفعها. الزيتون، الزيت مثلا، بيجي بقول لك حقه بيصير 900، بينما في قبل يومين واحد كان يبيع في منطقة البير من جلقاموس جنين 350 شيكل تنكة الزيت، بينما في رام الله بتوصل 900. بيت جال أظني 1100 1200. طيب يعني مين اللي عمال بيتحكم في معاشتنا وفي حياتنا؟ قضية كمان الاقتصاد، يعني أنا يعني بيجي بقول لك قاطع بضائع المستوطنات وما تقاطع بضائع الإسرائيلية. يا سلام، شو بتفرق هذه عن هاي يعني؟ طب بإمكان المستوطن يزور ويكتب لك ميد إن حيفا وخلص، يلا اشتري المنتوج. هم عمال بدخلوا بضاعتهم للسعوديه ولا هذا مكتوب عليه ميد ان ايطالي وميد ان فرانس وهو بضاعه اسرائيليه. الدكتوره هديل يا ريت تعرفين على المركز، انا اول مره بسمع فيه وبتمنى انه يعني نشوف اذا في له انجازات او له مثلا بحوث عملها او كذا. بالنسبه للاخ كريم، انا بنظر يعني بطلع امشي في رام الله بحس حالي اني انا غريب عن البلد، انا ابن البلد. بحس ناس بعرفهمش يعني في او كنت اعرفهم بس بحسهم انهم من خلال تصرفاتهم بعرفهمش مين هم، ما بعرفش. صار البنى العمارات التجارية على حساب البناء القديم الأثري، حتى بيوت قديمة بتتحول لكافي شوب، بيوت قديم بتحول لكافي شوب لما يتحول لمتحف أو يتحول لشيء كذا، يتحول لكوفي شوب. بالنسبة للبحث الدكتور مجدي، يعني أنا بتمنى إني أشتغل في البحوث، بس المشكلة إنه لما بدك تيجي تعمل بحث بيجي بيطلب منك شروط إنه والله لازم تورينا بحث عملته سابقا. هلا أنا صار لي متخرج 12 سنة تقريبا، يعني اشتغلت في يعني تعبئة استمارات بس ما عملت بحث. هلا أنا خلاص من جامعة دمشق، مش عارف كيف إن الواحد بده يعمل بحث بعدين يجي يقول له تعال اشتغل معنا.
رجال الاختصاص
يعني مش عارف احنا، يعني أنا شوي عمالي بنسى البحث الاجتماعي، عشان هيك بضطر امسك البحوث اللي بتنعمل واطلع عليه عشان ما انساش. فمش عارف كيف ممكن الواحد يشتغل، كيف يشتغل يعني وقتاش راح يشتغل.
شكرا
لكم.
شكرا. تفضل.
عمر عودة. سؤالي للدكتور نصر، يعني أنا بأكد على كلام السائل اللي قبلي، وين تدخل الحكومة في نظام إذا كان في نظام حر؟ بالأمس القريب صارت موضوع البندورة حديث الشارع، صارت قضية رأي عام الكل يحكي فيها.
يعني الاستغلال أفضل للوقت، بلاش نكرر
يعني
طيب نفس الأسئلة.
بس بأكد على الكلام
نعم.
اللي تفضل فيه. والسؤال الثاني للدكتورة هديل، شو كنت تعني في كلمة الإيذاء النفسي للجيران للسيدات في غزة؟ شكرا.
روجر هناك إذا ممكن.
روجر هيكوك. سؤالي للدكتور مجدي. تشرشل قال مرة إنه الديمقراطية هي أسوأ النظم باستثناء كل النظم الثانية. هلا سؤالي، هل مشاكل البحث في فلسطين هي بالمقارنة مع أماكن أخرى هي مش أحسن كتير؟ أحسن كتير، كل شيء نسبي. لو نقارن مع سوريا أو شو اسمه الاستبدادية أو لبنان الطائفية إلى الآخر. وبعدين خاتما لسؤالي، ليش إذا في حل قد من الصعوبات أمام الباحث بيجي حل قد من الباحثين المحليين والدوليين بيشتغلوا بفلسطين وبيروحوش محلات أخرى اللي قد تكون أسهل الشغل فيهم؟
آخر سؤال ناخده هون.
يعني سؤالي هو لكريم والدكتورة هديل الدكتور نصر مع بعض، ربما بشيء شامل يجمع بين الثلاثة. في النظرية التنموية الفلسطينية، بين قوسين كلمة نظرية على افتراض انه في نظرية، كان الحكي بيدور على اساس انه تعالوا تنعمل تنمية من اسفل الى اعلى، bottom up process for development. وحتى فياض صور على انه بن غوريون فلسطين، لانه انحكى انه بدي اعمل التنمية من اسفل الى اعلى. طبعا ننسانا من التشبيه، ولكن بالمفارقة الحركة الصهيونية هناك لما بدأت في عملية البناء الدولي بدأت من أسفل إلى أعلى. وجهت بمقاومة فلسطينية، ولكن كان في لها دعم دولي، فبالتالي استطاعت تبني الدولة من أسفل إلى أعلى. الآن يقال إنه نحن عندنا حالة شبيهة، إنه عندنا سلطة فلسطينية، في عندها دعم دولي، وفي احتلال بمنع الحركة، لكن في النهاية الأمل إنه مع الدعم الدولي نقدر نوصل لهالدولة. فشو تقييم كل هالقصة هذه؟ يعني بالتالي يعني احنا جربنا طرق تنموية سابقة، وهلأ عم بنجرب هذه الطريقة اللي تسمى البوتوم اب. هل في إمكانية هذه الطريقة نفكر بطريقة إنه ممكن تكون ناجحة مثلا؟ يعني مثلا إذا وفرت ضمانات نجاح خطة فياض في المنطقة سي وفي القدس مثلا، وإذا ضمنت مسألة كمان خطة غزة اللي قدمت في مؤتمر شرم الشيخ في آذار 2008 إنه تطبق، كل هذا مع بعضه مع الهيومن سيكيورتي اللي حكيت عنها، الأمن الإنساني، ممكن يخلق حالة جديدة. هذا هو سؤالي الإجمالي.
شكرا. هذا كان عندك سؤال؟ اوكي تفضلي. هذا
سؤالي لدكتور نصر عبد الكريم هو عن اقتصاد السوق، وإنه هل بيصلح إنه إحنا نحاكم نتيجة اقتصاد يدعي إنه اقتصاد سوق، أو بادي من بريمس إنه هو اقتصاد سوق على نتائجه إذا كانت عادلة ولا لا؟ اقتصاد السوق مش مصمم، يعني تلزق تلزيق لما سأل، يعني لو حدا بده يسأل إذا اقتصاد السوق بيكون عادل، لقى إنه يمكن أنا بكون عادل باحترامي ل certain rights للناس، حقوق ملكية، بس ما كانش بدور على أي ولا بيدعي إنه رح يكون قادر يوفر أي نوع تاني من أنواع العدالة. وبالتالي لما سألت السؤال عن إنه هل الاقتصاد الفلسطيني هو بيكونه مش اقتصاد سوق، هل بيوفر أي عدالة؟ ما هو بادي أصلاً من بريمس إنه ما رح يوفر عدالة. السؤال الثاني عن السلطة المقاومة، كمان نفس الإشي، يعني السلطة ما بدت ولا إجت عشان تكون سلطة مقاومة، ولا ما كانش فيه حتى توقيع الاتفاقيات كلها الاقتصادية قبل ما حتى تتكون السلطة، كان في تصور لإيش دور السلطة، وكان تصور بيستثني إنها تكون سلطة مقاومة. لأن اقتصاد مقاوم يعني أنا بسأل، لو افترضنا إنه السلطة بدها تتبنى طرحك أنت بإنه خليه يكون اقتصاد ميكست ايكونومي بين سوشيالست وبين ماركت ايكونومي، طب هل أنا السلطة بتقدر تعمل إشي؟ السلطة بوجودها بالمحددات اللي عليها هل في إمكانها؟ يعني أنا بدي أطالبها بإشي، لو أنا بدي أطرح بديل على سلطة وبوجودها يعني وإذا بدي أترك فرضية إنها قائمة، بدي أطلب إشي اللي هي بتقدر عليه. بس أنا مش متأكدة إنه تغيير السياسة الاقتصادية هو أمر مقدور عليه من قبل هاي السلطة، وهذا هو.
يعني شكرا على المداخلات، وبحاول إذا بقدر أجيب على سؤالين سريعات. أستاذ زهران والأستاذ عمر يعني متحكم في الأسعار، يعني بعتقد بأنه يعني يفترض أنه قوى العرض والطلب في الأسواق أنه تحكم بالأسواق بالأسعار، وبدناش نغفل جانب البعد الدولي في مسألة الأسعار السلع، لأنه مرات كثير بصير في حمى في الأسعار في الخارج، إحنا نستورد التضخم، لأنه إحنا في النهاية جزء من منظومة العلاقات الإسرائيلية، وما عندناش عملة وطنية مشان نقدر نخفف أعباء على المواطنين. هذه التقلبات في الأسعار هي برأيي بتعزز ما أقوله أنا، بأنه الحكومة يجب أن لا تكون في المقعد الخلفي للاقتصاد الفلسطيني على الإطلاق، لأنه في النهاية الحكومة والدولة بجوز نيجي لهذا بعدين لازم يتأمن الناس من مسألتين: أمن بسموه الأمن البشري الإنساني اللي مصطلح اليوم سيكوريتي، وجزء منه الاقتصاد، الأمن الاقتصادي، والدفاع عن وجودهم وذاتهم. وبالتالي خلاف ذلك بيصير يعني السؤال الشرعي والمشروع إنه ليش بدي دولة، أنا شو بدي حكومة. إذا حكومة ما قدرش تفهم الناس من سعر بندورة يصل يتجاوز سعر الدجاج، معناته مشكلة جدية في مسألة آليات عمل السوق وآليات توفير وإدارة البلد للاقتصاد. الدول لما بصير فيها ارتفاع من هذا النوع عندها وسائل وموارد كافية لتتدخل، يا اما بتدعم المنتج، يا اما بتوفر في الأسواق وتشتري وتعيد بيعه،